Welcome to Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast. Join us as we weave a new legacy of feminine leadership with voices from visionary women around the world. I'm your host, Arlia Hoffman. Welcome back to Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast. I'm Arlia, and I'm with Jacqueline Robinson, creative director and founder of Tapestry Feminine Collective. Jacqueline, I love our conversations. They get so deep. And we've been talking about what sisterhood is, what it is to create intentional community. And last time we talked about creating sacred space and how a woman can then really drop into her body, feel herself, just actually feel, because that's a lot of what our culture doesn't support. And I'm thinking that sounds really beautiful. Create this beautiful space, music, a welcoming vibe, a really sacred vibration. And I've seen time and time again, women are so intimidated by that. They get so uncomfortable in that environment because it's foreign to them. And even if they've experienced it before, every time, it's a layer of vulnerability to step into that space and trust the container.
Yes, I have encountered that as well. I've encountered it over the years that we've been doing temple. I've seen both. I've seen the women who, following temple practice, say, I had no idea the depth of my need to be, first of all, in presence with herself as a space out of ordinary life, right? Which goes back to what we talked about, creating the space, to come into a space in some ways, much like when we're the bride, when we're younger. Really, it's a sacred event, a sacred space is being created. And the beauty of this year with Tapestry Feminine Collective is we're not only weaving an intimate, sacred space where we can let the guard down and be ourselves and commune, we're also creating some movement and ritual and practice of magic, additionally some teachings, and then a gorgeous evening, dinner, dancing, celebration, dress however you desire, gala, where we can really let it rip.
Yeah.
Women need this. I've also encountered women who, when they come into such a deep, intimate, sacred space, the response in the nervous system is so loud, so overwhelming, protective, that it undoes her completely. And going back to how I spoke about my first encounter with meeting you, my first temple practice, the depth of the emotion that I felt in the meeting you, and immediately not understanding on a human cognitive level, but at a deeper space within my woman, knowing, I know this woman, I belong here. And I had to choose to have that experience, even though in my nervous system, I had no idea what was going on. In my nervous system, do I look ridiculous? Did I wear the right thing? Do these women think I'm crazy? Am I practicing deep enough? Am I allowed to move like this in front of others? Like, I had my own personal pieces of discomfort, and choosing to move from the discomfort into the courage that is partnered with, I need this.
Yes. And even from a leadership perspective, I deal with all the same things. There is such an internal monologue inside us that it may never completely go away. Do I look ridiculous? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it well enough? Am I all of those internal questions does require to be able to witness those and not get swept away by those. When I was immersed in this training for days, I was throwing myself into the practice. I was happy to be there with every practice and every diving into the ceremony. And I would come out of those with a full on mental reaction.
Mm.
It was shame, it was disappointment, it was all sorts of emotions. And I began to understand that was what was being dislodged in me to be cleared. After a couple of days, I was like, okay, this is happening every time I leave ceremony. And that's because the whole inside is getting reorganized.
Yes.
And it takes the courage, that strength of the heart to say, I will do this. I will show up. And I'm going to be safe regardless of what happens.
Yes. It requires the courage, and you said of the strength of the heart, and I agree with that. It is heart driven. And in the way we've been speaking about this, the space has been created now. And I want to use the analogy similar to the bride, but it's not obviously the same. But it's a day in a woman's life that is very sacred, where there is ceremony, where there is preparation, where there is major transformation. And this experience that Tapestry is holding in November has the very same elements. And so there is a sensation of coming into that. The courage that's required is heart driven and must then be executed through the will. And to me, the will is intimately connected to the womb. And so when those are in alignment, and the passion and the devotion and the opening of the heart is present, does not mean we won't feel the tenderness of exposure to something new and different within ourselves and within the communion of other women. It is exposing. Sometimes it feels like standing naked. And our collective history that is now in the consciousness, in the collective of what it is to be woman, immediately wants to clothe the nakedness.
Yes.
And get everything organized and orderly and presentable and, right, all just
Safe.
And yet we crave and we need the nakedness and the exposure and the unraveling. And even, I'm going to say, the messiness. And by messiness, I don't mean a woman who has so much going on. She can't get ahead. She can't hold it. She doesn't know what to do. And so she's just a mess. I'm talking about a woman who walks her talk, lives her truth, understands when something comes up, what it is to heal it, what it is to let it go, what it is to change the dialogue, whatever is needed. I'm talking about this woman in relationship with family. Maybe her business is already established. And yet, there's an edge calling her to become more tender, more exposed, and she intuitively understands that sensation of messiness and unraveling is only unraveling and undoing what is not her and hers.
That's right. And therefore, that vulnerability, to the ability, the desire, the willingness to get messy or allow that discomfort is the very process that builds our own power and our own strength.
Yes.
And our ability to connect with one another. We're not going to connect with each other through the monkey mind.
No.
It's going to be, particularly for women, through this open-hearted space where we are able to, it's not control, it's regulate our nervous system to be able to hear ourselves, to open and be able to give and receive with other women.
Yes, and I even will take it a step further that I feel for the kind of woman we're talking about, for whom this experience is created. Her nervous system will thrive and become aligned with her power even more by putting herself in an experience that is unknown, that is outside of her everyday, ordinary reality. It's just like when we travel, it changes us. Now we're talking about physically traveling to a location where you're coming into this celebration and deepening and ripening and seasoning and expansion and richness of women. But you're also internally traveling into a space that's not your everyday life.
Yeah. Joan Halifax calls those, you said edge, she calls those edge states, where you can feel that edge, that one side is contraction and staying small. And to be able to walk that edge or leap off that cliff or be able to enter the unknown off that edge is the key to everything. It's the key that leads you into your own greatness.
Again and again. And as soon as we meet the edge, it moves, right? That's what we are as the feminine. And I'll bring us full circle with this. If you imagine being with your partner, your lover, your husband, your person that you're in intimate relationship with, and having a moment in lovemaking where the experience is not in your mind, but it's in your body. And sometimes it might be that it makes you weep because something you didn't know you felt, you suddenly feel in this intentional space that is created for this experience, in the being seen and known and loved. And what happens in that experience of lovemaking with our person is when these pieces are in the field, we begin to feel ourselves get deeper, open more, fill the space. Our pleasure begins to fill the space. And we often, whether it's a baby or something else, we are then in a state of being to conceive the next piece of creating our life. If we're in childbearing years, to conceive the child we've wanted. If we're in our older years, perhaps to conceive the next level of our business. Perhaps to just conceive more intimacy with ourselves and the women around us. But that's also what having the courage to step into the unknown, to take the risk, to meet the edge offers to us, is more of this woman in relationship with these women. And we deeply crave this, so much so that very few women even know or have touched how deep that need is. within
Yes.
us.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that the depth of that need is what, when we can recognize what it is, what helps us, it's the fuel for that courage and that vulnerability to say, my woman, as you say, my woman, my body, my spirit, my soul needs this. And there's the edge.
And there's the edge. It's like the edge becomes the threshold. Okay, now are you going to step? And this part of our conversation is talking about the exposure, the vulnerability, the courage, and bringing something new into our nervous system to become comfortable in the presence of other women, deeply comfortable, so that we can open and experience the flow and the creative edge. And that is Joan of Arc. Has been with me, in me, lives in me for years, and it feels like lifetimes. I am not afraid. I was born to do this.
Yes.
We were born to do this as women.
And I want to add here that the type of sacred space we're discussing that we've experienced together, that we're creating with Tapestry, is not pie in the sky. It's very real. It's very
not pie in the sky.
No, it's very real. It's very grounded. It is happening. And this type of community and sisterhood and deep feeling and communion, it doesn't happen by accident. We've talked about how it's intentional, but what I want to say is it doesn't happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere, but really for us to be our most open, for us to be able to be willing to go over that edge, the willing to say, yes, I want to create the sacred space and embrace this vulnerability and commune with these women and be in community. It takes a sacred space, sacred, trusted container.
Yes.
That's essential for any of us to feel safe enough to let down our guard, to let down our masks. And I'll say that's one of my whole callings in life, is to create that sacred container where women do feel safe. And another container is Tapestry, where you can be absolutely sure that the container created is integrous, loving, beautiful, sacred, and only for the highest expression of who we are. Yeah. I think that's important to say, because you can go to any sort of spiritual gathering and you don't know what you're going to get.
And we have lived that.
And we have lived that. And I also know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, or I wouldn't be here, that's what Tapestry has created and is creating.
Yes.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I think next time we're going to talk about the impact this type of gathering has on women.
Ooh. Great.
I'll see you there.
That. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Visit tapestryfemininecollective.com for more information about events and all our podcast episodes. We'll see you soon.